Each small-scale enhancement scheme has a designated pot of funding for small parish or village improvement projects. Ideas come forward from community groups or parish councils which identify any small improvement projects, and then they apply to the scheme for funding, of which we take forward.
Small-scale enhancement schemes have been set up in the North York Moors National Park, East Cleveland, Scarborough Rural and Rydale. Please check with your scheme coordinator if your village is eligible.
The main aim of the project is to coordinate and deliver small-scale schemes which will contribute to the development and renewal of the village environment and the conservation and enhancement of rural heritage across the Leader area.
So, how much can groups apply for? Community groups and parish councils can apply for up to £5,000 towards the cost of a project, provided the total project cost is no more than £7,500. Groups can apply for these funds by initially contacting one of the scheme coordinators. There's a very simple application form which can be downloaded from the website, or the scheme coordinator can send one out to the group. The forms are on the North York Moors Coast and Hills Leader website.
Advice can be given to groups in terms of project development and delivery. We can help groups draw together final plans, permissions, quotes and any other financial contributions. We also oversee the implementation and payment process. In many cases, there is a need for specialist input requiring professional assistance, which the scheme can also assist with.
The main emphasis of projects should have a conservation and heritage theme and can include physical works to enhance or restore historical features, improved interpretation, or activities to celebrate and increase understanding of history.
We'd like to encourage projects which bring about an environmental improvement to an area, to improve habitats such as planting patches of bare grass with trees and native plants to encourage birds and insects, wildlife corners, creating ponds for watery wildlife, and planting nectar-rich habitats to encourage dwindling bee populations.
Protecting traditional and rural skills, for example, leather embossing, dry stone walling and willow weaving workshops and demonstrations.
You will see from the clips to follow examples of projects that the scheme have already supported.
I'm Ruth Wackett, I'm the head teacher at St Aiton Church of England School, and very proud to be involved in the garden project. I think one of the important things to say is that when we first started, we asked parents to send in their designs, and once that had happened, then we had one or two parents who also wanted to be involved in making a vegetable garden. So that's a sort of side project that's come from the main one, and something that we're really pleased about. It involves the children, and we intend having a market stall to sell the produce as well, and using it in the children's school dinners. And then for the main project, we're absolutely delighted to have got it. It's a wonderful thing for the children, and we know that the people in the village will use the project a lot as well. And most interesting of all is the fact that it's a conservation project. So we've already made animal homes for the little creatures that we want to get coming into the garden, and intend to make more of those in the future, using pallets and wood and drain pipe and things like that. The children loved doing it, and they've already been out there to see what they can find inside, and we're delighted to find spiders and woodlice and all sorts of little creatures in there. Today we're doing some willow weaving, which we hope will give a bit of structure to the garden and provide a bit of a shady den for children to go in, and also adults who want to come along to sit in as well. Our school's a Church of England school, and so we'd like to make a prayer space as well, and today we're making wind chimes that will also have part of the Lord's Prayer written on them as well, which fits very well with the Christian character of our school.
Milestones came into life principally in the 18th century. What was happening then was that landowners particularly and businessmen were very anxious to get their produce off the land into the markets using all-weather roads, and so from that emerged the financing put together by landowners to pave an all-weather surface on the main roads. These became the turnpikes, the toll roads, and to pay for it, toll booths were put up at different intervals. But part of the whole deal was that it also be milestoned, and this served a double purpose. The milestone told people how far they were to travel, and this affected the fares. And when people were posting their letters, the postman needs to know how many miles to the next time, the delivery point. So up until 1840, all postage rates were governed by distance, and so milestones have a very significant purpose. When we're looking at this milestone, there was nothing around until 1900. Why on earth were milestones still being put in at considerable expense? The expense of this was, and I've got beside me here an advert from 1913, and by this maker, and this would have cost approximately 12 and sixpence. If I wanted it to be recast now as a replica, it would be well over 1,000, if not well over 2,000 pounds. This empty country lane you see was in fact at one time the main road between Pickering and Scarborough. And how do I know? The reason is, but there's no milestone. It's the one we've been looking at being repainted. It'll go back in here and the story will carry on. We hope in the future we might find some more milestones. Who knows, a bit of hunting may find something, but one day that may be possible. Anyway, we're very grateful for the support we've received so far from the Leader funding, and the one you've seen in the workshop being repainted will come in here, and hopefully many people will come round and look and ask questions. But thanks to Leader for all their support.
I'm Tony Jefferson. I'm Secretary of Whitby Beekeepers Association. I'm also Vice President of Yorkshire Beekeepers, and earlier on this year we were actually quite fortunate to gain some funding to procure a number of nucleus hives, which has allowed us to set up many new beekeepers in this area with bees from this area, native black bees, rather than risk them import bees from other parts of the country. And the main benefit that's given us is that we've actually got native bees, our black bees, which are more resistant to diseases and more suitable to this area, and it's allowed us to maintain the breeding culture in this area. And with the good spring that we had, the great weather we had in March and April, it actually allowed us to breed many new colonies of bees, which we would have been unable to do if we hadn't had the funding to procure these 30 nucleus hives. So it has actually been invaluable to us, and managed to get set up a number of new beekeepers, and they're up now and active and pursuing the fantastic hobby that beekeeping is. What we've got in this apiary is a number of regular, what we'd like to call production colonies of bees, as well as some nursery stocks. If you look at the tall hives, they're our production colonies, which are on a brood box and at least 3 or 4 supers. And then our smaller hives, they're this year's breeding colonies, which are in WBC hives, and they're now set up as actual colonies for next spring. So even though we're only at the beginning of, well, nearly the beginning of August, we're actually thinking of next spring. And those hives started off life as one of these breeding colonies in one of these nucleus hives. And these are literally 5 frames of bees with a queen that's just come into lay. So the queen that's actually in here is probably about 5 to 6 weeks old. So it's the last batch of this year's breeding. Say 5-6 weeks ago, whereas the ones in the smaller hives you see here, the small WBCs, they would have been probably April or early into May queens. Again, reared in the leader nucleus hives, but now grown into full colonies, and they'll take us forward with a young queen for next spring. So we're just going to have a look in this hive and just see what we've actually got in the way of frames and how a typical hive, nucleus hive for this time of year. Just a tiny amount of smoke just to subdue the bees slightly. So you can see they're not actually bubbling up in our face. I'm just going to gently take a frame out, and with a bit of luck we might well be able to find a queen. What we've got on this frame is some patches of sealed brood, which is the darker cappings, and what that actually is, that's bees waiting to actually hatch. There's a couple of bees there, one feeding the other, if you can see that, just finished now. And in some of these other cells you can see the pearly white larva, which is actually the larva prior to the cells being sealed. So the queen, we know she's on here because there is actually eggs, and I'll look for a queen in the next frame. But the egg she lays today will actually hatch as an emerging bee in 21 days time. It takes 3 weeks for the bee to hatch. There's a number of young bees on this frame. If you look at that one there, I don't know whether you can pick it up on the camera, but it's grey and fluffier. That's a bee that's probably just hatched in the last few minutes actually, and then eventually it'll become more shiny like the other bees. Also on this frame you've got some honey stores, the whiter cappings in the top corners. There is a little bit of pollen, but what you can actually see in here is all the unsealed larvae. So I'll pop this back in and I'll try and find a queen on the next frame. This is typical of the size of colony that a beginner would get in sort of May time. Oh, we found a queen. This is the queen with a longer, more tapered abdomen. You see she's slightly longer than the other bees, but she's looking around the comb now, looking for an empty cell, and when she finds one she'll actually reverse into it and pop an egg in that cell. Her purpose is to continue laying eggs night and day, and she'll lay up to 2,000 eggs a day.
Hello, just to give you some background information into Heritage Hill Saltburn, we're doing it deliberately to coincide with the folk festival. I've been coming to the festival for the last 14 years and have been into all kinds of craft things. Last year we decided to try putting a wood carver into the melee, if you like, to do some demonstrations just to test the public's reaction as to whether or not they would be interested in doing some hands-on stuff this year. We filled in 4 or 5 sheets of positive replies, so on the basis of that I applied for a grant to LEADER, the small scale enhancement scheme, and fortunately won sufficient money to bring 8 or 9 craftspeople here this weekend. The whole idea is to introduce the public to 1 hour and 2 hour sessions where they'll actually sit down, make things and take them away with them. So we think that this promoting these old skills hopefully is going to blossom in Saltburn, and we can run some 1-day and 2-day courses here, and perhaps establish Saltburn as a centre of excellence for these revival crafts. First demonstration we have here is coracle making. My grandson is actually coming up for Saturday and Sunday. He will actually do a build and encourage people to come along and have a go at helping him to build a coracle. We have Norman Bush, who is a ex-farmer, lives at Summerbridge in North Yorkshire. He's doing a session on corn dolly making, one on inkle weaving, which is braiding, and another one on rope and knot making. At the CIU club we have Dick Laidler doing a demonstration of dry stone walling. These are 2-hour sessions, and anyone who comes along can have a 2-hour free tuition on building dry stone walls. The noise behind me is Jonathan Manby from Theakston's Brewery. He's demonstrating coopering, and he has a little competition at the end of his demonstration. We have Mark Constable next to him. He's a primitive blacksmith. When I say primitive, he's not primitive himself, it's primitive blacksmithing, where he's invented a very, very small forge in a bucket, and he's doing fire lighting as well. So we've got quite a mixed bunch of different crafts. On the front of the portico we have a pole lathe turner. He is a full-time farmer and does pole lathe turning. He makes gates and hurdles, and interestingly the old ladders for orchards, which has a pointed top. And finally, the guy who really started it all off was Cliff Healy, who is a leather worker, leather embossing. He is a folk musician, lives at North Ormsby, and he's demonstrating as well this weekend. So we've got an interesting bunch.
As part of the outreach and education project on Filingdales Moor, when the Hawk and Owl Trust took over the running of the moor, they, along with the National Parks Authority, decided to develop a nature trail. The nature trail envisaged came down off Jugger Howe and came down into Jugger Howe Beck. When we got into Jugger Howe Beck, it was realised that there were soft areas where people could get into trouble when they were walking. Following this, we decided to create a boardwalk to make it easier access for people to come in and enjoy Jugger Howe Beck. With the help of leader funding, timber was bought for the boardwalk and we progressed the project. Initially, we'd started at the end of the boardwalk, as this would allow us easier access onto the moor to bring further timber on. The bridge crosses a slack which gets flooded in winter, and so we needed good access over this area. The concrete blocks you will see near to the bridge are actually winding gear from when the moor was used for target practice during the Second World War and into the 1950s and 60s. All the work on the boardwalk that you will see done has actually been done by the Hoots volunteers, who come every other Friday to work on the moor, and by Hawk and Owl staff.
Last year I had the chance to work behind a computer desk for as long as I wanted, or to retire and do something else. I tried this out last year and chose this, so I retired in December and I now do this. Not quite full time, but near enough. Enjoy the fresh air, getting to places you wouldn't normally see. It is hard work, but it's very worthwhile, and you meet a lot of nice people as well.
Thanks to leader funding, work will continue on this project and hopefully will be concluded by summer of 2012. It's envisaged that more people will use the trail, and if people want to find out more about the trail, they can find out on the address given on the Hawk and Owl website. These marker posts will help you as you walk round and will hopefully point out things of interest that you may find enjoyable. I hope you do. I enjoy working on this moor, and I hope you realise why I enjoy being here.
I'm standing next to the site of what was once an iconic copper beech tree that stood here in this place for probably 200 years. And it developed a problem which meant that it had to be taken down, and this caused a considerable amount of upset for both local people and visitors alike. And so the association to which I belong, the North Yorkshire Moors Association, decided that it would be rather nice to use the remains of this tree to produce something which would be a reminder of what was once there, but also something that would be useful to inform people about the cultural heritage of the North York Moors. And from those early beginnings, we organised this tree stump to be levelled out, and for a large plaque to be placed there, which was in keeping with the existing tree stump and reflected what was once there. And the plate contains the names of quite a large number of people who in some way contributed to the cultural heritage of the North York Moors. And this covers the period that the tree was growing here, approximately 200 years. The History Tree project that we embarked on would not have been possible without some extra funding, because we're not able to fund a project like this ourselves. And so we're extremely grateful for the leader money which came to support this project.